Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Next Big Fight podcast. With me, I've got James, Dan, and Ryan. James, how you doing, mate? Okay, James isn't doing very well. Dan, yourself?
I'm here, mate. It's all good.
And Ryan?
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, well, it was breaking up.
Yeah, breaking up.
No worries. No worries. And yourself, Dan?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks. Cheers, Will.
Excellent. Right, we're talking Frampton v Quigg. Blockbuster of a fight last night. Two of our panellists were at the fight, Dan and James. We'll start with you, Dan. What did you make of the atmosphere last night?
Yeah, brilliant. Just what I expected, really. I mean, all of Manchester was buzzing. A lot of the Irish come over. Big event. It kind of reminds you going back to the Ricky Hatton days, the buzz surrounding it. Big build-up to the fight. And obviously shame about the anticlimax of the fight, really.
Well, before we go into the fight, a lot was made of the travelling Irish contingent. James, what did you make of the attendees? Was it mainly Irish Frampton fans, or was it a mix?
Pretty much a mix, to be honest with you. I mean, what I heard from where I was mostly was people just booing. So each individual fighter. Sorry?
Everyone was booing, did you say?
Yeah, I could just... people booing each individual fighter. And by the way, who turned up at the drum again? It's not an England match.
The George Groves band.
Someone turned up with a drum again. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. When I saw and heard that, I immediately thought it was just a ploy from Eddie Hearn trying to make up for the lack of fans that Quigg had. Would you say that's fair to say, Ryan? Do you think Quigg needed that additional support there?
Yeah, it started at the weigh-in, didn't it? They had the guy at the drum at the weigh-in. And, was it a whole band, or was it just one guy, or what?
It's a four-piece band, I think.
Four-piece band.
I was trying to spot them. Yeah, I couldn't even see who is it?
To be honest with you, the first time that George Groves had it on his comeback fight, I thought that it was needed, but to have it for Scott, it made a bit more sense for George Groves, the England thing, but I do think it was a little bit of a ploy to try and be a bit louder than the Frampton fans, but, I've been to Belfast a couple of times now, and, I've always said that the Irish, the Northern Irish fans over there, they're absolutely mental, and they create an atmosphere that you can't really describe unless you're there.
Well, absolutely. It looked like the atmosphere was second to none. Let's talk about the undercard, and I'll come to you first, James. Obviously, the main event spoke for itself, but what did you make of the undercard and the fights leading up to Frampton Quigg? Was it good quality? Was it mediocre?
Well, the only one I ended up catching was that Jamie McDonald fight against Seth Sanchez. And it was pretty much a routine victory. The others, I didn't even bother going to it because I wasn't interested, and that was the problem with the undercard.
Okay, and Dan, yourself, you attended the fight. Did you have any interest in any of the other fights, or was it really just Frampton Quigg and anything else was a bonus?
Well, it wasn't. The undercard wasn't the greatest quality, especially for a pay-per-view show. I mean, a couple of the fights that interested me was the Ryan Burnett fight.
He was good,
he was good, yeah. Adam Booth trains, so interested to see him, and the Burton Shinkwin fight for the vacant British cruiserweight title was light heavyweight title was one I was interested in seeing. But the Gavin McDonald fight, I mean, talented fighter, but not the most exciting fights to watch. But
apologies, it was Gavin, wasn't it?
Gavin McDonald, yeah. I mean,
you still hung over there, James.
I just realised I did say Jamie. Apologies.
You did, yes. Well, the fact they're twins, we can let you off. But, he got the job done, but again, not the greatest of undercards, but I don't think
fairly decent.
People were there for that.
And Ryan, you were watching back home or in sunny Benidorm, is it?
Benidorm, fucking hell.
Where are you DJing these days, Ryan? Is it Benidorm or is Mallorca? Mallorca. Now, I saw a few tweets out there where people were comparing the undercard to that of Bellew Cleverley. Ryan, would you say it was a decent undercard, or was it very similar to Bellew Cleverley? Everything was geared up to the main event.
Yeah, it didn't have no appeal to the fans really. At least with the Cleverley Bellew, there was some big names on it, and that's no disrespect to anyone that was on the undercard, because there's some good fighters on there, but to a card that was to appeal to not just hardcore boxing fans, but the whole sort of sports stream, and to get people watching the undercard and get involved in the sport of boxing, it wasn't a great undercard to watch. Like Dan was saying, the Ryan Burnett guy was a good fight to watch. I think he's also got a good following. He got some loud noise. I actually put a tweet out saying that. But I think the undercard could have been a better quality, and of course you've got a lot of people moaning about the price of pay-per-view and this fights included. So
absolutely, and this is the problem. You see, from a business commercial perspective, I'm sure there was a budget in mind, and the vast majority of it went to Frampton and Quigg's purse, and it doesn't leave much left over, and as a result you get a relatively poor undercard. Now let's talk about the fight itself. A lot was made of the tactics, who would win and how they would win. I'll come to you first, James. Were you surprised with Quigg's slow start to the fight? It appeared that it looked like a rabbit caught in headlights, almost petrified.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. I don't know what was going on with him. I mean, them first 8 rounds, he just basically gave them to Frampton. It was really strange, but was that more so that he just didn't turn up for the big occasion, or was it just that Frampton wasn't allowing him to?
Well, it's interesting you talk about. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the big occasion. This was the biggest fight today for both, but mainly for Quigg. Frampton's topped big arena shows. This was the first pay-per-view fight for Quigg where he was featuring. Do you think it was a case of a little bit of stage fright and the occasion got to him?
I don't know. I'm more so on the side of saying that Frampton was just. We found out on the night Frampton was just way too skilled for him, and that's just the way it came across. His feet won him the fight basically, didn't he? He just kept him out of range all night, and it was pretty easy work in the end. I know we had them 3 rounds, but he had a little bit of success, but I thought it was quite an easy win for Frampton.
Is that how you?
And there's no point of. Sorry, go on, Will.
No, would you say it was just the tactics in that case, or was it just more the fact that Frampton didn't allow him to put himself in the fight?
I think it was more to do with Frampton, to be honest with you. I just think he's a level above him. He found out exactly. In a sense, it mirrored the Salinas fight, but basically, Frampton's a much better boxer than Salinas, and he could keep it up for 12 rounds. And even them rounds when Quigg started having success, it didn't, he was matching him, wasn't he, Frampton? So,
absolutely.
For me, there's no point of a rematch. People are talking about this. There's no point.
Well, Dan, is that how you saw the fight? The fact that Frampton got his tactics spot on and Quigg didn't. Interestingly, Frampton started on the front foot and was pushing Quigg back. Was that something that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the result was what I predicted, being a close fight in Frampton's favour. But I initially thought it would be Scott Quigg winning the earlier rounds with Frampton coming strong on the back end of the fight. But he just seemed very apprehensive. The occasion got to him, and also what I've been hearing today about the broken jaw scenario in round 4, I believe. Did that play a part? The fact he didn't want to engage, I don't know. But
well, that's a very interesting point there, Dan. And after the fight, in the post-fight press conference, Joe Gallagher was asked for his thoughts, and he said that after 4 rounds he had them level, and it was as a result of the broken jaw that the tactics were almost went out the window. Ryan, is that fair? Is that a fair reflection on the first few rounds? I personally saw Frampton running away with it.
Listen, at the end of the day, the first 2 rounds were going to be cagey. I watched the fight in a pub out here, and I actually tweeted out last night that the amount of people that become boxing experts after they watch a couple of rounds of boxing is unbelievable. You know, the first couple of rounds, because what was happening in the pub is they had which is quite a bit of fun. They'd done a little bet and they put a load of pieces of paper in a tin with what round each fight could win, and then you paid £2 and then you get, you know, the round pulled out, so Quigg in the ninth or something like that. And I said to everyone in there that there's no way that there's going to be any stoppages early on. You know, the fight's too big for that. And we see that the first couple of rounds in the fight was as cagey as it comes, and we expected that. But what I did expect is for the fight to pick up in rounds 3 and 4. And, you know, it wasn't just cagey in the first couple of rounds. Frampton was flicking his jab out and throwing, you know, 1s and 2s, but Quigg literally wasn't doing very much at all. He was just standing there covering up, and throwing one punch back. It just, I don't know. I really don't know what Quigg was doing. And in the actual interview at the end of the fight, you know, Gallagher made more of the broken jaw than Quigg did. He said that it didn't bother him. It was numb. You know, he had to test it out a little bit, but he still didn't do anything for another four rounds after that. I don't think he started actually engaging until sort of the 9th round, which once he started engaging, we started... He had
a little bit of success, absolutely. James, were you surprised...
Does it come to the whole boxing intelligence, though, that what Frampton was talking about in this fight? Is that what it came to, do you reckon?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because...
He couldn't think on his feet and he didn't know what to do. I mean, I've heard someone saying... And this is bizarre for me. He said it was similar to the Chris Eubank Jr. situation with the Billy Joe Saunders, that if he would have started earlier, he would have won the fight. No, it's not a comparison for me.
I mean, the tactics from Quigg were quite bizarre. Frampton was just teeing off at will, and Quigg just had his hands up. James, are you suggesting it's a lack of a boxing brain, or was it just the fact that Frampton was too good on the night?
I think a bit of both. I think it was a bit of both. I mean, what I was thinking then when you were just speaking about that, I'd like to see the punch stats. No, for Quigg from 1 to 8, how many punches he actually thrown. Because I don't really remember him throwing. When he did throw, he was always out of range and missed by miles anyway. It was quite, to be honest, it was quite embarrassing. No, watching him, he just like he just did not know what to do.
Can we just while we're on the subject, Will, can I just read some of these tweets?
Yeah, go for it.
Next big fight earlier. You got Billy Ed Jr., so at Ed Billy. I just basically asked what your thoughts was on the fight last night. He said it wasn't about tactics, it was about starting late, and it was about levels, as simple as that. Which, you know, I think is quite a good point. I do think Frampton might have, you know, proven that he was the better fighter there. Someone said the huge pressure, hype, stakes and audience instilled fear into both fighters and tamed down a potentially explosive, awesome fight. That's by Big Bad Joe C. What else have you got here? You got at Simo Wolf, Frampton Quigg was awful, all hype and no action. Left it till the last minute to buy on pay-per-view. Wish I hadn't bothered. So just a couple of opinions from some of the people on Twitter. We'll read some more a little bit later in the show. But
absolutely, and thank you for those contributions. Dan, let's talk about the fight. Frampton seemed to be running away with it, and Quigg only got involved late on. A lot was made of the 11th round, and Gallagher claimed that Frampton was out on his feet. Hearn also claimed the same. Would you say that that's a fair reflection? Do you think Quigg had the opportunity of getting Frampton out there late?
I think it was at one initial stage, and I think it was beginning of round 10. You could tell Quigg had a lot more urgency coming out into that round. Maybe from instructions from the corner that he was behind. That's when the fight really started engaging. I think I recall him hitting Frampton with quite a big hook, I think, in the 11th round. In terms of knocking him out of his stride, I just don't think it was going to happen, really. Again, I just think the whole occasion got to Quigg, the pressure, everything else.
What about yourself, James? Do you think that Frampton was in trouble at any stage during that 11th round? I mean, he'd maintained such a high intensity throughout the fight. Was it a case of him dipping and Quigg capitalising? Do you think he had the opportunity of getting him out of there?
Never thought for 1 second he wasn't still in control of that fight. But I mean, that's what people are going to judge it on. But no, I mean, he finally got inside in the 9th inning. He finally got inside, and he hit one or two body shots. And I thought, why haven't you been doing this from the start? And then, but like I said, even though we got going quick, Frampton was still giving as good as he got. So,
to be fair as well, sorry to cut you off, but for me, I don't think that Frampton even needed to engage into the, going toe-to-toe with him, because he was boxing well, moving around, and Quigg finally started getting involved. And the first round that Quigg started putting it on Frampton, I thought Frampton looked a little bit troubled, but then in the next round, he was getting a bit bullied and pushed on the ropes. But in the next round, he really started to stand toe-to-toe with Quigg, and I was like, I was sort of getting a bit annoyed at the TV, but he didn't need to do that. But I think that was almost like a point to prove that he was in control. Do you know what I mean?
That he could.
Ryan, I think Frampton did need to engage. He could have boxed on the back foot, but that fight would have just been going nowhere. Someone had to initiate the fight, and Frampton was the first one to do it.
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say.
Frampton. Sorry, you can't blame Frampton for what happened with the way the fight unfolded. He just stuck to what he needed to do to win the fight. At the end of the day, Quigg didn't turn up and do his part of the fight.
No, it wasn't until obviously the urgency, he knew he was behind, that he decided to come out and trade, but a little too late.
Well,
I think Frampton just wanted it more for me.
Yeah, I mean, he did leave it a little late, and I have to agree with Ryan there. There were times when Frampton didn't need to engage, and he did, and it was to his downfall, really. The more he traded, the more you felt that Quigg was going to overpower him, and as a result, you'd see times where Frampton would need to tie up Quigg because Quigg was getting the upper hand. Now, let's talk about the judges' verdicts. We had 2 give it to Frampton and 1 give it to Quigg. Ryan, what did you make of the scoring?
It was it was one of them when you just knew that one of the cards was going to end up being given to Quigg, and for no reason whatsoever. There was no way you could score that fight to Quigg. Did a poll on the Twitter page this morning, and I think 85% of people said that Frampton should have won, 10% said a draw, and 5% said Quigg. I want to know the 5%.
The 5% are clearly Gallagher's gym, and their employees and their friends and family.
No, there was no way in hell. If it was a draw, it would have been quite a controversial decision. But you could have taken a draw, but there would be lots of us saying that Frampton edged it. I personally think that Frampton won it comfortably, but how you score fights, Quigg had a bigger ending, so if you gave him a couple of the first rounds, which is no way you could have done because he didn't do anything, I just think it's ridiculous that anyone could score that, and it spoils boxing that you get scorecards like that.
I'd have to agree with you there, Ryan. James, did you also think the scoring was out when that judge read out the Quigg points? I had flashbacks to the Mayweather Canelo when one judge had it 114-114.
Remember that?
Did you have Frampton winning by a very clear unanimous points decision?
Yeah, it was a clear win for Frampton. It wasn't. I don't know how that judge scored it for Quigg and that, but you're talking about people. You put a poll up earlier, Ryan. Someone actually tweeted that Next Big Fight pod page saying that he thought that Quigg won by 3 rounds because a lot of them rounds were tight, and I honestly did not know how to answer that.
James, well, I answered that and I blocked him. But Dan, would you also say that? Would you also say that that judge in particular that scored it for Quigg was probably watching a completely different fight?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're always going to get the case of big fights, aren't you? You're going to get someone getting it totally wrong, as you pointed out with the Canelo Mayweather fight. But no doubt the right man won, and I'll pretty much. Obviously, the two scorecards that went to Frampton were pretty much the reflection of the scores. But I think what I saw earlier on Twitter with Boxing Monthly, which I've got to agree with, would be more 116, 113, because I think the first round was pretty much shared, because neither done anything. So
yeah, I'd agree with you on that one, Dan. I mean, I don't usually like saying, listen,
I don't really
share the round, but usually I like to say that one or that one, but that first round not an Athens, so you couldn't give it either way.
Exactly, that's scoring fights. It's got to be one or the other, but
has to be conclusive. Absolutely. Yeah. Now let's talk about what happens next, and we'll start with Frampton. So, Ryan, there seems to be an elephant in the room here. Does he fight Rigondeaux, or does he move up and fight Santa Cruz?
I think he will move up and fight Santa Cruz. If you watch the post-fight press conference last night, you know, Frampton sits there and says that he's interested in Rigo, and then you've got Barry McGuigan sitting next to him shaking his head, and it's like, you know, who's in charge here? Whose decision is it? And you know, but he's saying he'd fight Rigo. Do I believe him or not? Maybe he would. He does seem to believe in himself, but you know, he also probably knows that McGuigan doesn't want him to have that fight, so he can say that, make it look to the fans like he would fight him, but you know, he may go up and fight Santa Cruz. And I think that would be the best direction for him. I personally would you know, avoid Rigondeaux like the plague.
Okay.
I don't think he would beat him personally.
James, do you share that opinion? Do you think the fight out there that he should really push for is Santa Cruz?
Yeah, talking about Rigondeaux, I was talking about this myself earlier. I said, if it was up to Carl Frampton, yeah, he'd go for the fight, but Team Frampton are not going to go for this fight, are they? They're not going to allow him to go into such a high-risk, low-reward fight against Rigondeaux and that.
Yeah.
But if I have said this earlier in the week, if there's a time to fight Rigondeaux, it's now, because last time he had a good opponent was Danair and that, but then again, when I'm talking about that, I think both are boxers and that, so it might just, you know, end up like a fight like Austin Trout and Lara. You know, when them two fought, the better boxer will just come out on top. So that leads us to Santa Cruz, and yeah, I would like to see him fight Santa Cruz. That is a good option, and it's a big money fight, isn't it? Both being Heyman fighters.
But both, absolutely, both being Heyman fighters. Dan, are we doing? I mean, a lot of talk has been made about Rigondeaux, whether he's going to fight, whether Frampton's going to fight Rigondeaux. Are we doing a massive disservice to Jazza Dickens, who obviously fights Rigondeaux on the 12th of March, or do you think it's a formality and we should be talking about Rigondeaux Frampton?
Well, you know, I think it's pretty much a formality. You know, I don't think he's going to come to lie down, but it's such a big golfing class, that fight. I think it's pretty much a showcase fight for Rigondeaux.
Dan, I think you're being way too polite there. He's easily going to beat Jazza Dickens. Let's talk about whether Frampton will actually fight Rigondeaux or whether he'll push for Santa Cruz.
Well, on that subject, with also he's now got the WBA IBF titles, he's got to make a decision here, because my understanding is the IBF are going to push for him to defend against Shingo Wake, I believe. The WBA has now mandated him against Rigondeaux. Now, whether something can be worked out similar to the Fury situation where he was stripped, does he fight Rigondeaux and vacate the IBF? Who knows? But
vacate both, and just move up. I mean,
that's the other option, of course. But then he said, look, yes, last night he's happy to stay. He makes the weight easily, which is basically
I don't know about that.
Well, I'm just going on basically on what he's saying. So if he feels comfortable with the weight, then he's got to make a decision really what route in terms of what belt he wants to keep.
Guys, I've just put a tweet out asking, didn't he? I've just put a tweet out asking, you know, what do people think, and so far we've got Rigo, Leo Santa Cruz in Vegas, and then Rigo in Belfast. Someone said Rigo, Santa Cruz, and someone says Joe Gallagher and Eddie Hearn. And I think you'd enjoy that one.
He was a frat last night, wasn't he? At the end, you see him jumping up, going crazy all the way through the fight. Well, he didn't hear me from where I was sitting, like, but I was telling him to sit down and that and shut up.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because the only time that I really sort of paid attention to Eddie Hearn was that 11th round. I was watching it in a bar in London, and I actually thought Quigg hurt Frampton, and Frampton backed up, and there was an opportunity for Quigg to really seize the moment and really put it on Frampton, and I think that's why Eddie Hearn was frustrated. He leapt out of his seat, and he was trying to usher Quigg on, but for some reason Quigg didn't go for it. It was interesting to see. But guys, are we unanimous in our feelings that we would like to see a Santa Cruz v Frampton fight?
I think it just makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, it's an easy fight to make.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Are you talking about if he decides to move on from the division?
Yeah, if he moves up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
No, I think he needs to move up, because he nearly went past his free clause, didn't he? I mean, 9.5 did he come in on? I mean, you've heard he's struggling with the weight, and I don't see why you shouldn't move up. It's like a fight off featherweight as well.
I didn't hear that actually, James, but I mean, but basically the back of the post-fight interview, what he was saying yesterday, I think he made it pretty obvious he wants to stay at the weight. He was making it easy, so I don't know really what to believe in that really, but.
Well, as you said, Dan, we can only take what the fighter says, and he said that this was the easiest he's made weight, so we have to believe him. I mean, if he can stay at the weight, why not?
Well, that's it. I mean, as Santa Cruz, I think, has made a lot of interest, made a lot of noise and interest in fighting Frampton. Both with Heyman, easy fight to make, but it's not going to happen over here. No.
Well, it remains to be seen. Now, before we wrap things up, let's talk about Quigg. Now, obviously, he's broken his jaw. We wish him a speedy recovery. Where does he go from here, Ryan? Who would you like to see Quigg in with next?
What he's going to need to do now, because of for a guy like him, you've seen into the build-up that. He believes in himself, and he takes his training very seriously, and boxing is his whole world, as we keep hearing.
He trains harder than any fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for that reason, he's going to need a little bit of rebuilding. There's no shame in either of the guys losing to that fight yesterday, because of the magnitude of the fight. They're both at good points in their career. It's not like they're on, 3 or 4 losses. It would be their first loss, and so he's in a position now where and it's obviously up to Eddie Hearn to point him in the right direction and make sure that he gets back to winning ways, early doors, and then tries to rebuild and start getting amongst the world titles again. Because and to be honest with you, I wasn't a massive Quigg fan, but he has grown on me. Apart from the annoying comments about how hard he trains all the time. He is quite.
Yeah, you almost want to say to him, "Give it a rest, take a day off. We don't want to hear about that." Tell us about another attribute that you have.
Take a day off from training.
Absolutely. So, Dan, what are your thoughts? Do you think Quigg potentially could go in with Donaire? Is that a fight you'd like to see?
Donaire, yeah. Again, the nature of the result last night doesn't mean he has to go back as far and rebuild. I think he's a world-class level now, so I think get him in literally with another champion and go that route. He's good enough to win another world title.
Right, okay.
What we can do.
Perfect. Dan, we're going to have to wrap it up there. My thanks to the panel, Ryan, James and Dan. Thank you everyone for listening to another edition of the Next Big Fight podcast.